I'm not going to start with any easy questions.
What would you do if you couldn't fail?
I was vulnerable in the sense of I was just who I was.
The cold exposure conditions the inside of our body to literally adapt.
Whatever happens in the gut happens in the brain, and whatever happens in the brain happens in the gut.
Finding the grace and the humor.
Anti-aging is associated with at least an hour of deep sleep nightly.
Absolutely had mentors, absolutely 100% had coaches.
90+% of the decisions that we make today actually stem from fear.
Allow ourselves to have imperfection.
Nothing starts without a plan, nothing ever goes to plan.
Chaga is actually the most antioxidant rich food on the planet.
If we can bring a practice into our lives that helps us be more vulnerable. I'm so thrilled that this content is getting out there, that you guys are promoting bold and vulnerable message and aspirations for people, because I hope that we can all really live that every day.
Hey, this is Jessica.
And Svetlana, and you're listening to the Bold and Vulnerable podcast,
where we aim to inspire others to live authentically through sharing the bold and vulnerable stories of peak performers across a variety of industries. Hey guys, it's Jessica here, and you know I love my coffee. We have recently partnered with a company called La Repubblica Coffee. They are completely fair trade, they are non-GMO and all vegan, which you guys know I'm vegan, so I'm totally a fan. But the cool thing is that this is a mushroom coffee company. You know, sometimes people feel stuck in their coffee routine. They feel like they can't live with it, they can't live without it. Maybe coffee makes them feel overwhelmed. This coffee completely makes you feel so zen. It gives you a peace of mind and well-being and a clean energy jolt. You don't have any jitters that you get with coffee because the cordyceps really help to regulate the intake of caffeine from the coffee. It's a rich source of vitamin D, E, and many other things that help your immune function and optimal health. It's a perfect way to incorporate high beneficial superfoods into your morning routine. I love to start my morning with just a smooth cup.
This morning, I was so freaking excited because I ordered my bulk order. I'm telling you, George and I were literally waiting by the door yesterday. I'm not joking. And finally they came at like 7 and we were so excited, and George and I were like, should we drink this now?
Yeah, listeners, you guys are going to be so excited because you get 15% off all of your orders by using the code vulnerable, all caps 15. So vulnerable 15, all caps.
We only partner with companies that we believe in here at Bold and Vulnerable because we really value honesty and just being truthful to our audience. Being a working mom and entrepreneur, you really want to have all the hacks possible at your fingertips. So I'm so freaking excited to be partnering with this company.
Everyone that I've talked to who's tried it has been raving about how delicious it is. And we drink it during our podcast episodes, and just to give us a jolt of energy. It has 7 superfood mushrooms. So not only do you get the benefits and energy of your cordyceps, but you also get the healthy benefits of lion's mane. It gives you so much focus and immunity support. You also get this really nutrient-rich product that elevates your focus and also elevates your gut. So it's almost like using a smart blend of quality chaga, reishi, shiitake, turkey tail, and your immune system just gets this daily boost of energy. And it also helps to alkalize the effects of coffee's natural acidities.
Yeah, definitely. And what I really love about it is that they have a gold standard for their manufacturing, which I think is really important, which tells us that they have high standards, obviously, as do we here at Bold and Vulnerable. The benefits that you're receiving in 1 cup of coffee are just outstanding.
It's kind of like an anti-inflammatory for your body, which is absolutely amazing. And not only that, it has a wonderful taste. So I think that's everything that people are looking for. Even people that don't drink coffee, I think will probably enjoy the taste of La Repubblica coffee.
We have a discount code for you. It is all caps vulnerable 15.
Head over to larepublicasuperfoods.com and type in vulnerable 15. When you check out, you will receive a 15% discount on all of La Repubblica's mushroom coffee.
Get yourself an amazing adaptogenic cup of coffee.
welcome Daniel to the show. Daniel is originally from Montreal, Canada. He began his career at Boston Consulting Group's Detroit office, working with clients across a number of different industries, including private equity, manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, and healthcare. He then went on to join a startup called MedPricer, which provides cost reduction solutions to hospital systems. From there, he led driver and rider engagement for California markets at Uber and ultimately launched the Uber Freight business, where he co-led mobile development. Daniel now leads the global business operations at a rapidly growing startup called CloudKitchens, which is led by the founder and former CEO of Uber. Daniel also works as an advisor and consultant to early-stage companies with a specific focus on automation and growth. He is based in Los Angeles and loves baking, cooking, hiking, and traveling. Fun fact, Daniel and I also lived together in San Francisco. When I first moved there and was trying to find an apartment, I moved in with Daniel and our other friend Sean, and we had a really, really cool time in the Mission. We were right down the street from Dolores Park. And I'm just so excited to have Daniel on the show because not only do I know him personally as a really good friend, I know that he is so intelligent when it comes to specifically focused on automation and growth and really advising startups. So not only am I truly honored to have Daniel on the show, but I'm really excited, especially during this time, to have Daniel come on and be able to talk a little bit about what's going on in the market right now economically and how we can really come back to our focus and come back to that growth. So thanks, Daniel, for joining the show. We're so honored to have you. And so, Daniel, I know you're out in California. You're in Los Angeles now, aren't you?
Yep, exactly. I've been in LA since I joined CloudKitchens about almost 2 years ago, actually.
Amazing. And, you know, unprecedented times right now. We're going through this COVID-19 pandemic. What are your thoughts on just where the economy is going and what's going on in the business world, since you are kind of advising a lot of startups and early stage companies? Where's your head at with a lot of the things that are going on in the world economically?
Yeah, it's like you said, it's unprecedented times right now. I think it remains to be seen exactly what the impact is going to be. I think, it really depends on how long and how severe this is. I think that, obviously the number one thing we can do as people in the world right now is just do whatever we can to stop the spread of COVID-19. But, depending on when restrictions loosen up, when we can start resuming normal lives, I think, there's going to be a lag between that and when things start to recover, because you're dealing with a lot of things, right? Capital doesn't start flowing immediately. Venture capitalists, a lot of them are pretty much shutting down any new investments right now. So it's kind of a scary time, I think, to be in that world or in the startup world in particular. But you've also got lots and lots of other industries, particularly industries that rely on hourly labor for the majority or a large chunk of their workforce are probably going to be really hit hard, especially those people that are in there, right? So I think it really remains to be seen what the impact is going to be. But I think, if we can pull out of this in the next couple of months, there's a chance at at rescuing things and getting things back on track. But I think really, like I said, I think it's heavily dependent on how much longer this goes on for.
Yeah, and I know it's heavily affected the stock market, but I actually have seen it as kind of a positive, because this is the time, in my mind, that you would get into the stock market, that you would start to invest, because it's going to go back up. And so my mindset has really been, where can I invest my money? Where can I be smart? Where can I, be smart with clients? Because Svetlana and I are both coaches, so a lot of our business has started to dwindle down during this time too. So it's kind of like, where can you be smart with your money? How can you be resourceful? So I wanted to ask you too, like, what do you think in terms of, if you're advising anyone in the business world right now, what types of tools or resources might you suggest that an entrepreneur struggling to get through this time might be able to turn to? Do you have any advice for folks that might be hurting?
Yeah, I mean, in this discussions I've had, I mean, first of all, I just want to say there's no silver bullet here. It's just kind of guessing based on what we think is going to happen in the near future. But I think really what I've seen is a lot of back to basics, freezing hires and freezing expenditures on things that are important, but, don't keep the lights on necessarily. They're not 100% mission critical. And so, what you're seeing is a major pullback on that stuff. And that looks different for every single company, right? For some companies, they might be embarking on an automation initiative that's not essential, might help them squeeze out a few extra points of margin. But, other companies, it could be marketing. Other companies, it could be strategy, operations. It really just depends on what the makeup is of the company. But, I think the common theme there that I've been seeing and in discussions that I've had with folks is really about trimming the fat, so to speak. Just get down to what you need to survive and keep pushing on those pieces. In the case of early stage companies, that typically ends up being, product or anything customer facing, stays. Anything else that's, accelerating the development of the product or, doing whatever else that is great to have, but it's not going to keep the lights on is sort of on pause.
Yeah, I think a lot of employees, like you mentioned earlier, might be affected by this. But again, with startups, you're right, it could affect product. So let's get more into your journey too. Maybe you can kind of take us from little baby Daniel growing up in Canada and how you got to where you are today. Because I know that you're in this startup and you've got a ton of wonderful experience from your time at Uber and creating Uber Freight and that whole entire business. So kind of walk us through your life and kind of how you got to where you are, and we can dive into automation and all that good stuff.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think if I think about the things that are most relevant to my career from growing up, I think about really two people. I think about my dad and my grandfather. My grandfather worked in construction his whole life. Quit school at the age of 10 to support his family in Italy, and then moved over to Canada without even speaking the language or anything when he was 18. Shares a similar story to a lot of immigrants, especially in the late 40s or mid 50s, and worked really, really, really hard his entire life. So did my grandmother. They had 4 kids. Each one of them was educated, and that was a big priority. And so I think that sort of work ethic was really instilled in me from a young age, just by sort of observing the people in my family. Everyone in my family does something different, but everyone works really, really hard. And the same goes for my dad. My dad started off at GM. He was a supervisor in the body shop on the night shift when he was in business school, and worked his way up, worked really, really hard, long hours. We're talking waking up at 4 a.m., out the door by 4:30, not back till 6, 7, 8, for years and years and years. And, eventually worked himself up. He was an executive when he left GM. But just seeing these examples so early on really just taught me the value of really working hard and believing in what you're doing. Particularly hearing stories from my dad about how he navigated certain situations at work, whether it's with internal employees or with, challenges that are being faced, like the 2008 financial crisis was obviously very rough with the company going bankrupt. But just hearing those stories, how he tried to lead with integrity, and, how sometimes doing the right thing really takes a lot of extra work. And so I think those are the two most formative people as far as my career goes. And then I sort of have had a really winding path, throughout my professional life. I was pre-law until the end of my second year of undergrad. And I happened to be catching up with a friend of mine who was about to go into consulting at BCG. Simultaneously, I was chatting with some friends who were in law school and some family friends who were practicing attorneys. Just kind of shared the reasons why I was thinking about pursuing that career. And they all kind of indicated, that's probably not what you're going to get. I think one of the reasons why I thought I'd make a really good lawyer is because I'm decent at arguing or debating, as you know, Jess. And I think, just having those conversations with friends who are in law school, they just kind of illuminated what it would actually be like. And not a bad career by any means, but just not quite a fit for me. And then, I mentioned I was chatting with my friend who was a couple years ahead of me in school, and he was going into a firm called BCG, and told me all about consulting, how, you get to basically just work on lots of different industries, lots of different functions. So, he touched on a bunch of them. I did some due diligence work for a private equity firm. I did, lean manufacturing work for a truck manufacturer, a market entry strategy for a healthcare company into Latin America. And my personal favorite project was a growth strategy for an Indian tractor tire company in the US and in Western Europe. And if it's not clear yet, I should make it clear that I had absolutely zero experience with tractors or tires before that. So it was a really awesome training ground. They've got a really fantastic program where they sort of, you get a review, a really robust review. It's a 25-point review on every single project that you do. And the strategy that I used, because I knew this was only going to be maybe 2-3 year stint for me, was that I wanted to aggressively learn as much as I possibly could, aggressively develop myself as much as possible in the early years of my career. And so what I did was basically every single time I finished a project, I looked at the lowest scores that I had, the areas where I needed to improve the most. And I basically went to the staffing team and I said, hey, these are the areas I need to improve on the most. Can you throw me onto a project that is heavily going to test that? And so I just kept sort of throwing myself into the fire with these new projects and tried to learn as much as I could and to get better every day. And toward I think about 18-month mark of my career in consulting, I sort of started to feel like it's probably time to dive in and do something different. And I had a couple industries I was mostly interested in. One of them is healthcare, which I still am today, and the other was transportation. And I found a really awesome company called MedPricer. Joined them pretty early on. I think there were 10, 12 people. They're now about 40, I think, maybe a little bit more. And had a really good group of mentors there, and folks that were really passionate about what we're doing. And that really translated well. It kind of allowed me to see what it takes to operate versus just recommending strategies, which is more what consulting was. And I got to work on our pricing strategy. I got to do some customer facing engagements. I worked on analytics a lot. I worked on automating some of our manual processes so that we could scale up without adding too much headcount and stay profitable. And interestingly enough, which is particularly applicable today, I think I saw that startups can be really financially disciplined from the get-go. A lot of what you're seeing today, and I think a lot of what's going to happen in the next 6 months, is these sort of Silicon Valley type startups that just spend money like crazy until they realize it's time to turn a profit. You're going to see a lot of them fall by the wayside. If venture funding is dried up, either you're going to see startups starting to accept terms that are way worse than they could have negotiated 6 months ago. But I think my experience at MedPricer just showed me business is business, and you've got to think about profitability, and you've got to spend diligently from day one. And that's what we did, and that was really fantastic experience there. And like I said, I had a couple really, really good coaches there in our VP of operations and in our CEO. And then about 2 years into that, I was recruited over to Uber by a friend of mine from high school, actually, and started off there on the California team. So like I said, I managed driver and rider engagement. So primary metric there was market share. So basically we were tasked on my first day with, you've got until the end of the year to claw back about 20-25% in market share, relative to our competitors. And so that was the mission. And that was also a really good training ground because I got a lot of leeway from the GM of Northern California, who trusted me a lot and taught me a lot. And, was able to really grow from that experience, manage a team of analysts and marketers and contractors. And it was really, really a positive experience. And, it's funny that to mention automation again, I decided to move to launch the Uber Freight business when I started to see that the rideshare business at Uber was really starting to be automated. People don't realize exactly how much goes into an app like Uber. They think it's just kind of a quick, few hours of engineering to build the connectivity between the rider and the driver, and that's kind of it. But when you poke under the hood, you realize that Uber was still doing a lot of things with operations teams that were not automated, well into, let's say, 2016, even early 2017. But the writing was kind of on the wall. We started turning over a lot of different things, as we should have, to the product teams, to data science, et cetera, turning over what we were doing manually with our analytics to machine learning algorithms that just continuously improved and got smarter every day, every minute of every day even. And so I just kind of saw it, hey, this is probably the end of the line here for operations teams on rideshare. And simultaneously was introduced to somebody who was leading the operations team on the freight division, and jumped in right away and helped launch that business, and then worked on the product team there. And that was a really cool experience, especially given what's going on in the world with automation, and just getting closer and closer to the technology to develop more of an understanding of that side of things. Was a really, really great experience. If you look at product and you look at operations, at least the way that Uber ran it, they're both doing the same thing in that they're solving problems. They're solving business problems. They're trying to make the experience better for users. But at the end of the day, it's a very different tool set that they use to solve those problems. Operations might hack something together, with glue and tape, whereas the product and engineering team will build a fully automated solution. And so getting to see, both sides of these was really, really fantastic. And then, did that for about a year, and left Uber in mid 2018. About a month after I left, I got a call from my old boss, Matt, from Uber, telling me, he's like, I just joined Travis's new thing. You've got to come here and check it out. And started off leading account management, growth analytics, and customer onboarding. And that was a pretty cool experience. Did that for about a year. And then our CEO asked me to move over to sort of help start a new team, which is the team that I work on now, the global operations team. And basically what we do is we're deployed around operations and to some functional teams as well, to help fix things, either to fix things that are broken, to automate manual processes so that we alleviate the burden off of the operations teams, or to just serve as extra hands to the folks that are managing the day-to-day business, that are in the trenches, working with our customers hand in hand. They don't often have time to work on this kind of stuff. And so, stepping in with a little bit of extra resources, a little bit of a broader skill set than the average operations person is really what my team does. So I've just droned on for a while, so I'll stop talking now.
No, it's a great kind of segue into talking about your experience, but you just kind of led me in a different direction here. You've been talking about all your success and kind of how you've navigated through the space and gotten into product. What, I guess, have you had any types of adversity or failures within your journey that have taught you any lessons or set you up for success later on? And it doesn't even have to be in business. It could be professional or personal, any type of adversity that you've been through in your life that maybe has kind of either led you in a different direction or set you up for success in something else.
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been fortunate that things have gone pretty well in my career, but definitely have faced a lot of adversity. I make tons of mistakes every day. Lots of things I need to get better on, today, and the same was true throughout my career. But I think one of the experiences that will stay with me, I think, the rest of my life was being at Uber during 2017. I don't know if you recall correctly, but the year started, I think it was the last week of January in 2017, when a blog came out from one of Uber's engineers, and she was essentially alleging that she had been harassed on several occasions, I think, and that the company didn't really do anything. And then So that bomb dropped, and the team that I was managing, 50% of it were women, and that was a pretty scary moment. I think that was really terrifying for me because I think when you consider what women go through in the workplace, I think there's a couple buckets you can talk about here. One of them is overt harassment. I think that's pretty easy to spot, right? Someone behaving inappropriately, saying inappropriate things. It's pretty easy to just snipe that one out. But more difficult to sort of tease out are microaggressions. And I started questioning every single conversation that I had ever had, with the women on my team, and wondering, am I holding them to a higher burden of proof on their analyses than I am the men on the team? Am I interrupting them more often? I kind of get excited in these meetings, and I do have a tendency to interrupt people, which I'm working on. And I was wondering, do I do this more to the women on the team? And what other things, might I be doing that I'm not even aware of? And so that's kind of how my 2017 started. And it was, it's a positive, right? Because that allows me to do a lot of introspection, and allowed me to have a lot of conversations with the people on my team and get their feedback, and just kind of get them to monitor and give me coaching when I, did something or said something that wasn't quite the right thing. And then, that kind of snowballed into the rest of the year. So you had the Delete Uber campaign that was kind of born out of a misunderstanding at the JFK airport when there were there were protests against the immigration ban that the Trump administration had instituted. And that just basically snowballed into 2017 at Uber. It was every day or every other day there was a new article about something not super moral, not super legal that Uber had done, one of its teams had done around the world, in the US. And it was really challenging. I kind of, it became challenging to be around folks who weren't at Uber, to be honest, because nobody really understood what it was like. You had a company that everybody joined because we were working to change the world, to democratize access to transportation for people, to create the 6 million driver jobs that exist today, and do all sorts of other things. And, all of a sudden it went from feeling like we were doing real good for the world to, everyone questioning you. And, living in San Francisco, where folks are, on average, particularly liberal and very, very plugged into what's going on and social issues and in the news, multiple times had to defend my decision to work at Uber, and kind of became more and more challenging. But what it really pointed to me was the importance of integrity and the importance of culture. There was nothing explicit in the Uber culture that said it's okay to act immorally, or you should break the law or do anything like that, or sweep harassment under the rug. But there was obviously something that happened, where folks felt that they either had to do those things or that they could do those things, and that there would not be any repercussions from the company. And it really just underscored to me the need to really invest deeply in culture, and to be very thoughtful about culture from day one. Before you make your first hire, you have to be super, super diligent about what you want to build, how you're going to build it. I think that's the piece that people miss the most. It's not just what you want to build, but you actually have to think about the processes that you put in place, the systems that you put in place to operationalize the culture that you want. And that's really what that year taught me. It's, you can have zero compromises on the culture that you need, because when things grow, they'll get out of hand if you're not, building and maintaining a really strong culture of ethics and morality and doing the right thing.
So I'm curious, how did you navigate those times, and what are you doing right now in your current industry to implement those sort of processes of, like implementing that integrity, the ethics throughout the culture, so that it dwindles down as the company that you're in grows and evolves?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think first and foremost, the way that I think about operationalizing those lessons is really to first and foremost make sure that I'm living them, And obviously I make mistakes all the time, and, you know, I step away from my values. But I've been really fortunate throughout my career that I've learned from every single manager I've had. And at Uber, I had some really phenomenal managers that coached me on everything from, you know, how to really break down a complex problem, how to motivate a team, how to coach out, you know, let's say less desirable behaviors, how to manage my own emotions when things get really crazy, all sorts of learnings from these people. And, you know, it was really, really fortunate that I had them to lean on during that period. And I've reached back out to a number of my managers from Uber and from before as well, to just sort of get their counsel on things as they come up. But as far as operationalizing them today, I think it's really just about, you know, what I mentioned, being really thoughtful about what you want in a culture, understanding what you can and cannot impact. You know, there might be some things in a broader company culture, for example, that are a little bit different from the way that I think things should be run. And so, you know, I might focus a little bit more heavily on my team. But really, it's just about, you know, going back to your first principles. You know, what do you want to build? Why do you want to build that? Are you serving your customers well? And, you know, ultimately, I think this is a quote that I've heard a lot around the company. You know, if we are good people doing good work, you know, that's really all we can ask for. And there's not going to be a perfect company from day one. Every single company has its issues. But I think it's, you know, really, really important to be open and to be honest about those issues and to face them together, and not to sweep things under the rug, because that's when things just build and build and build. You know, and then employees who are behaving badly, you know, sort of get swept under the rug, or employees who are just not quite sure how to handle things. They just kind of go rogue and do it their own way. And, you know, I think you really just have to go back to your principles every single time.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, you know, part of my role now with my company, BOLD, is consulting on leadership practices, and a huge chunk of that, I want to say more than half of that, is focusing on not only employee experience and employee culture, but also customer experience and customer culture, and how it's this large ecosystem. If you don't treat your internal employees really well, they will not treat your customers well, because they're not going to care as much. So you really, it's a huge ecosystem, and it's almost like a circle of life situation. So I commend you for even having the introspection to say, how have I maybe done these little microaggressions? How have I maybe been impacting women on my team? I just commend you for even having the intellectual, emotional intelligence to go there and to say, hey, maybe I can improve in this way. Because I think a lot of people aren't there yet in terms of your level of maturity within the business world. And, you know, you're still young, and I think it's great that you obviously have done so much in your life and you've come so far in terms of a business sense, but you can be the most talented person in the world, and if you don't have the emotional intelligence to take a step back and kind of do a 360 on yourself, then, you know, you can meet your demise in some companies, like you mentioned. So I commend you for that. Hey listeners, quick interruption to your podcast. For those of you that can't see Svetlana and I right now, we both have coffee mugs in our hand, and we are always sipping on our La Repubblica coffee. And you guys can actually enjoy the benefits and the adaptogens and all the beautiful qualities of this coffee as well, because they are actually our partners and our sponsors.
Well, you know, I'm obviously sipping on my La Repubblica coffee right now. I can't do a podcast interview without it. Nothing really works the way that this stuff works. There really is something in this coffee, and I mean, it's the mushrooms, it's the reishi that gives you sort of like that zen feel.
And if you guys maybe are feeling a little stuffy or feel a little tingle in your throat, this is the perfect elixir that can not only fight a common cold, but it helps your skin glow, your hair grow thicker, and reduces inflammation in your body. Chaga is amazing. And it also contains cordyceps for better performance and increased energy, but not the crash that coffee might give you from a caffeine standpoint.
Combating mom brain and fatigue right now, it's really helping me maintain focus and maintain that sustainability that I need to get on throughout my day, especially with a newborn and running multiple businesses.
You guys are going to love this coffee. Not only does it have the 7 adaptogenic mushroom extracts, but it will certainly transform your morning coffee ritual. And it's really something that you can integrate really easily into your peak performance habits.
I can attest to La Republica's coffee being one of the best elixirs that I've tried thus far, and I have tried several. I never, ever, ever talk about products unless I love them. If you guys are interested, we do have a discount code. It is
vulnerable, all caps 15. So vulnerable 15. Head over to larepublicasuperfoods.com and type in vulnerable 15. When you check out, you will receive a 15% discount on all of La Republica's mushroom coffee. Thanks for listening. Go grab your 15% discount. And now back to our episode.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really curious about adversities, even just outside of the workspace. Things that you've overcome, scenarios that you may have faced or overcome. What is it that really shapes you? You know, like what's your driving force? Like what drives you? I know you mentioned your grandfather, your relationship with your grandfather and your father. What about relationship with mom? I love to just go deep into the trenches. So anything that you want to share that shows that side of you, that is, you're just, you're a human being, you're a person, you have this like amazing work ethic and you're ultra successful, obviously. But what's beneath that? Let's learn more about that.
I think I appreciate the kind words, first of all. And, I do want to make sure everyone knows that I've had definitely my fair share of adversity, a lot of experiences that many, many people have had. I'm sure, you both gone through same things, right? Like, whether it's a breakup or, not doing super well at work for a period or, motivation waning, struggled with weight gain a little bit or overeating. And, I think the number one thing that I recommend to everybody is a practice I've been doing for about 3 years now, which is going to therapy weekly. It's really helped a ton. I've had really, really the fortune to work with really excellent people on that front, and really just dive into understanding my past, my history, little traumas that we all experience as children and how that manifests in your personality or in your reactions to things, and how you can sort of harness that and understand it more. I think that's really the thing that has unlocked a lot of my personal growth. I still have a lot of way to go. I'm working on that stuff every single day. I get feedback from my peers, from my manager, from my family. I want to make sure that I'm continuously improving there. But you touched on my grandfather, and I want to underscore that as well. Like, it's a lot of my motivation comes from just wanting to deserve the sacrifice that has been made by the generations before me. My grandparents both quit school when they were in 5th grade to support their families. Their families are 8, 9, 10 kids each. Growing up in southern Italy after World War II, there was nothing left. And, there was no economy left. And that meant that both of them got on a boat, spent a month on a boat, going from Italy to Canada, arriving in a country, in my grandfather's case, where he spoke no French, spoke no English, had no education, and arrived in the dead of winter. He's from a small island in southwest Italy called Ischia, which is in the Bay of Napoli. And he had never seen snow. I don't even think he'd seen temperatures drop below, 45, 50 degrees, and arrived in Montreal in the dead of winter. And his first job was shoveling snow, shoveling the streets and, throwing it into a dump truck that was slowly moving in front of them. And, just imagining that level of sacrifice, I think about when I was 18, I graduated from high school. I went to university, and, after my first year of university, I did an internship in China, in Shanghai. And my grandparents were worried, like they always do, about their grandkid going so far away, going to a country where, I didn't speak the language, and, there's a 13-hour time difference. And I just kind of kept thinking and kept reminding them, I can get on Skype, I can get on FaceTime anytime I want and see people and connect with people. And, it's a 12-week period. It wasn't years and years. And just, reminding them of what that experience was like relative to what they did when they were 18 and the sacrifice that they did. When they wanted to hear from someone from home, they wrote a letter, and hopefully months later they got a response. That's a really different level of sacrifice. And then, I mentioned my dad and my mom, both working really, really hard throughout their careers, throughout their lives. A lot of my motivation comes from, earning that sacrifice. I wanted to, I want to feel at the end of the day that I've done right by them, that all the sacrifice that they've done, that they've made, in their own lives, for our family was worth it. I think that's really a big, big source of motivation for me.
One of the things that I love that you brought up is the fact that you go to therapy. I just want to acknowledge that because I think that's beautiful, and I just want to honor you for being very vulnerable and honest about that, because I think that there is a lot of misconceptions out there and just a lot of scrutiny in general for men to, go and see a therapist and, talk about their feelings, especially, when there's this, you kind of see it out in the world, like you brought it up, even with what happened in 2017, that there tends to be this maybe like hyper masculinity in certain environments, right? And it's like, oh, you have to be a man, right? And I don't know if you've heard this, but I've spoken to different men that have been in these scenarios and, sort of feel like they're not sure if they can really share their emotions and their feelings. And I also know men that do go to therapy. My boyfriend is one of those people. And I also know men that refuse to go to therapy as well, because it's almost like they see it as a weakness, and I see it as a strength. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and honor that. And thank you for sharing that, because I feel like it's so important for us to continue to have that introspection and learn and grow and evolve.
Yeah, I appreciate that very much. And, I think I credit that honestly to the fact that I had a lot of really strong female influences in my life growing up. My mom I'd be remiss if I didn't say this on this podcast. My mom is my best friend. I call her every single day, and, I've confided in her about everything for years and years. And, spent a lot of time with my mom growing up. And, I've got aunts. I've got 4 aunts that I've spent tons of time with. I had my grandmothers, I had their sisters, I had a lot of really, really strong people, and my cousin, who's a year older than me in particular, and seeing and hearing about their experiences, and, also understanding how they navigate life. And, thankfully, the women in particular in my family have always taught me to be expressive and to share feelings, and, to do it in a constructive way, of course, but, not to shy away from that. And so I've been very lucky that was instilled in me at a very young age.
The other thing that I thought was really awesome that you brought up is, you're saying that you really wanted to be deserving of like your family that immigrated here and like basically, came here with nothing and worked their asses off, right? I was just talking about this with my boyfriend the other day, how like, with everything that's going on in the world right now with this pandemic, and I've never seen anything like this, right? All I remember is 9/11, right? But I was a kid back then. We were all kids. Like we were just kind of like, oh, no school today, oh, something crazy happened, right? But this is like, wow, we're living through this, and we were just looking around us and saying, wow, we've never been through anything like this. Like, especially like, I feel like as millennials, like we've had it pretty good. Like we've had it pretty easy. Our families came here. My family as well immigrated here, had nothing, like, Russian Jews that just came here and worked their asses off and made something of themselves. And our grandparents that were in the war as well. And we're just looking around now and we're like, wow, this is one of the most, kind of difficult things we've been through in a way. Difficult, it is scary in a sense. It's scary on one end, and on the other end, it's also like a blessing. I see it as a blessing. You stay home, be responsible, and take care of your family. But I feel like, compared to like what our families have been through, if you know what I mean.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I mean, this whole thing just illuminates. It's another reminder to me of how lucky I've been in my life.
Yeah.
Like what you said, the fact that my work has been able to seamlessly transition to working from home, that I've got a really, really supportive manager who's, checking in on me, even as he's going through the exact same thing. And it really just underscores what's important. I'm sure your portfolios have also been impacted, just seeing every penny that I've ever worked for in my entire life just get chopped by 30, 40%. It just reminds you, how fickle things are and how quickly life can change and how quickly material possessions can be taken away. And, in a lot of cases, how quickly lives can be really severely impacted. And it's just been a really amazing reminder to me of what's important. I'm FaceTiming with friends, I'm catching up, and I'm wondering to myself, why did I ever use the phone? Why have I used the phone since FaceTime came out? I should just be, trying to get as much face-to-face time with the people that I love and care about. And, during this time, I've been extremely lucky that my job has not been impacted, that, I've got enough means to provide for myself, that my family is safe, that my family is healthy during this period. And, it's been a really wonderful reminder that of how lucky I am and of what's important in life.
Yeah. Well, I have a question that is sort of on this topic, but also random out of the blue that popped in my head is, what's your purpose?
My purpose? Wow. That's a really good question. I think ultimately I like doing things that really improve people's lives. I think the closest thing to pure altruism that I've had in my career has been my experience with MedPricer. And just to give a quick plug for my friends who are still working really hard at that company, MedPricer has a negotiation platform for hospital purchasing. So typically what a hospital does is they go out and they negotiate with 1, 2, maybe 3 vendors for a given service or for a product, and it takes 12 to 18 months to do. And they might get some savings, they might not. It's really hard to compare proposals from one company to the next, especially when you look at services. And what ends up happening is that this whole process is consolidated into a 2 to 3 hour live negotiation that's blind from the supplier's perspective. So it protects, the terms that are in the lead. It protects the price that's in the lead, so that the hospital can just calmly navigate through the negotiation and not have to worry about, exposing an edge to a given supplier and overpaying. And what that does, the note, I remember one note that I got from a customer of ours that's a really large health system in Ohio, this guy named Curtis. I'll never forget it. I mean, the work that we did that year was really awesome. We achieved a lot of savings. And one of the things that he said to my boss and I was, he was very thankful for the work that we had done. And he said that because of the work that we had done that year, that they would be able to keep nurses and janitors and doctors on the staff at their hospitals, and that, children were going to have Christmases as a result of that work. And, that just felt incredible, to be able to help people. And, like I said, I think that's the closest example of pure altruism that I've had in my career. But, I do think that Uber's done a lot of good for folks. And, what really my purpose there and my purpose in my current role is, to help folks that were like my grandparents. My grandparents, like you said, they came here with nothing, no education. What CloudKitchens does is it allows restaurateurs to open up a new location and to start, investing in understanding this new digital world at a fraction of the cost that it would take them to open up a brick and mortar restaurant. And, I think about how many families from other countries got their start in restaurants here because they couldn't get any other jobs. Either, they were facing some sort of unfair anti-immigrant sentiment. Maybe it was specific to their group. Maybe they didn't have the education, didn't speak the language, couldn't meet the hours, etc. And, I just think about how wonderful it would have been 50 years ago to have something like this to really help people achieve their dreams and get their starts. And so, I think if you tie together the common thread between all these different career experiences I've had, none of them are saving puppies by any means, or they're not saving lives like a lot of the doctors and nurses are during this crazy period now. But they're creating opportunity for folks that typically don't get access to these opportunities.
You're creating impact in many different ways, regardless. Even if you're not saving lives or puppies, you're still helping. Like you said, you're creating jobs for people who need the job, who need to keep a roof over their head and provide for their families. So in one aspect, yeah, you are saving lives. And you could possibly be, with Uber, for example, like just ordering a rideshare service for your grandparent to get, across the city or whatever, which we couldn't have done before. That's been super helpful for me in helping my grandparents get around.
Yeah, I'm really happy to hear that. I love stories like that. It just kind of underscores that, it's not just a taxi service, it's democratizing mobility. I'm really proud of the work that so many thousands of people have done and continue to do at Uber.
Daniel, I know we kind of touched on this a little bit in terms of, automation and automating practices. And we just talked about that creating jobs. I think that there's also a lot of fear about that taking jobs away and, artificial intelligence coming in and really kind of changing up what's going on in the tech space. What are your thoughts on the future of this tech world and how we can all kind of navigate through this?
Yeah, that's a great question. Look, I think automation is going to impact everybody's life. There's some things that are going to take longer, some things that require deeper machine learning or artificial intelligence, like, take what you guys do, coaching, right? That requires a lot of really in-depth emotional intelligence and, understanding how to motivate people, understanding how to keep people on track and reading their emotions and reading, reading what's between the lines of what they're actually saying, right? Talking about our therapy practices before, it's, often what you feel, often what you express, there's hidden meaning behind it. And for a machine learning algorithm to be able to pick up on that stuff, it's going to take a while, but it's going to come. This stuff is coming for everybody. And I think it's really, really important that governments around the world kind of snap into action right now and start putting in training programs to help people cope with this and to help people navigate around it. We're going to have to retrain a huge percentage of our workforce every single year, every single decade to get used to either new careers or to learn new skills that have not been automated or, to work hand in hand with the automation. I do think it's worth calling out that a lot of the automation that I've seen has been augmenting human capabilities and less about replacing. There certainly are certain things that are replacing. Like, just give you an example. I remember walking down the street in San Francisco by the old Uber office, and there was a robotic coffee shop that I'm sure is still there called Cafe X. And
yeah, it's still there.
Yeah.
Great coffee. They have a robot. You go in, you punch in what you want on an iPad screen, and a robot prepares it, and then at the end, the robot actually kind of waves to you. And that in that instance, there are jobs created because Cafe X is a new company, so people got to run that company. But that robot and that ordering screen is doing the job of 3, 4, 5 people. So there's definitely examples where automation has replaced humans. But I think it's going to be more gradual than folks give credit to. And so I think, if the governments really snap into action right now, I think there's a chance at us transitioning gracefully into this. But there's some real problems that we're going to have to think about, and real problems that we've faced. If you look at the economy of the United States since the 70s, I mean, it's rocketed. It's the growth rate has slowed down quite a bit, and of course, who knows what it'll be after this whole situation now. But the economy has grown really steadily since the 70s, and real wages have not. And I suspect that automation is, partly responsible for that, because, you can get an engineer to code a program that would do the work of 10, 20 people. And, that's something that the government needs to address now. And I think that problem is going to be even more pronounced if they don't jump on it now, because real wage growth has to start matching, GDP growth. Otherwise, we're going to completely eliminate the middle class in the US.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I totally agree. And I know you've got a few minutes left here. Svetlana, did you have any last minute questions at all on your end?
I guess just, I feel like we touched on what's the most bold and vulnerable. We always ask our guests, what's one of the most bold and vulnerable moments of your life? And I feel like you really answered that, what was pivotal for you. Your morning routine, do you have a certain routine? Any hacks? We're super into biohacks. Any books that you're reading right now that you can recommend to our audience?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think as far as I'll tackle the second one first, the books. I'm reading a book called Emotional Intelligence 2.0. That's an area I really want to invest in. Working with my manager on that, and working through therapy on that. But
what were your outcomes? I've done the Emotional Intelligence 2.0, but did you take that little test and get your outcomes?
I did. I really can't remember off the top of my head. I do remember.
No worries. We can share later, but it's a great book.
It was basically you got some stuff to work on. Here's some resources. Get going, buddy. That was how I read my results. But as far as my morning routine goes, it's a little bit different now. It's a little bit more relaxed while I'm working from home. But typically I like to wake up really early. I sort of converted myself into a morning person when I started at Uber, because we worked really, really hard and quite often very late into the night. And so I shifted to my morning, my workout to my morning schedule. And so essentially I'll wake up, I'll have a small breakfast right away. I try to make it the same thing every day. So it takes the thinking out. Tim Ferriss talks about this a lot, of just removing unimportant decisions and reducing the cognitive decision-making burden on you every day. It sounds trivial, but what do you wear? What shoes you're going to put on? What time are you going to wake up? What route are you going to take to work, et cetera, et cetera. These are all micro decisions that we make, and they contribute in sum to decision fatigue. And important decisions that we need to make are sort of hampered by this buildup of tons and tons of decisions that we have to make. And so I try to do the same thing every day in my morning, where I wake up, I have some peanut butter, I have a banana, and then I have a coffee with some MCT oil in it. And that's medium chain triglyceride. It's sort of a thermogenic. It's good for weight management and appetite suppression, and also really good for focus. And so I do that, and then I water the plants out on my balcony. I'm very, very lucky that I have some outdoor space here. And then I kind of get into my workout. I think super important to stretch. I am now old enough that if I don't stretch before I go to bed, I wake up with back pain. So I'm pretty diligent about stretching nowadays. Then I'll come in, get ready for work and get going. Old
enough now? You are not. Well, how old are you? 20, 26?
20. I would love to be, but I'm almost 30 now.
28. You're 28. Oh my goodness. 29. Okay.
You think that's old?
I'll give it to you.
You're
but
insulting us.
I know.
Whatever it is, I now have to stretch or I get back pain. So I'll kind of take that.
It's probably just from sitting at the computer, though. Honestly, I don't think it has to do with age. It's probably just from like sitting a lot. If
computer pose.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, thanks for sharing those biohacks. I love Tim Ferriss, and the minimalism of thought is always a really beautiful biohack for the listeners out there. Getting your decisions to a minimum is definitely going to help out in the rest of your day. But thanks, Daniel. I'm so glad that we had you on. Thanks for joining us and coming on the Bold and Vulnerable podcast. And before you jump off, where can people find you? Where are you most active in terms of social media or LinkedIn or anywhere people can connect with you?
That's a great question. I think LinkedIn is probably the right move. I've got a public profile there, so anyone who wants to reach out, please do. Would love to connect, even if it's just to shoot the shit.
Awesome. Yeah. And if any customers out there are listening and you're interested in CloudKitchens, obviously send Daniel a message on his LinkedIn, and I'll link all that in the show notes, as well as the book that you just mentioned, Emotional Intelligence 2.0. We'll have all that linked up in the show notes for you guys. But thanks so much for coming on, Daniel. It was awesome talking to you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Svetlana. It was really awesome chatting with you both.
Thank you.
Podcast. This is really awesome what you're doing.
Thank you for listening to the Bold and Vulnerable podcast. For more information on today's speaker, please visit us at boldandvulnerablepodcast.com.
And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Let's keep spreading the love by being bold and vulnerable. Thank you. We love you.